Let's call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach City Commission. It is Monday, November 6th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, if you'll please do the roll call.
Vice Mayor Grill.
Here.
Commissioner Frzlowski.
Here.
Commissioner Marone.
Here.
Commissioner Grouse.
Here.
Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, the first item we have is a presentation of the National Wildlife Federation of Tampa Bay. Amanda?
Good evening. Very nice to be here. I live in St. Pete, and I have been a fan of St. Pete Beach and its sunsets for about 20 years. So really, really fun to be here with you all this evening to talk a little bit about a project that we did with the National Academies, and hopefully can be a good resource for you all as you plan your future and the resilience of the area, facing a lot of the changing climate and what is happening in the Gulf. So I'm Amanda Moore. I'm the director of the Gulf program for the National Wildlife Federation. So we work across the Gulf of Mexico and up the Mississippi River. Our hub, our base is in coastal Louisiana. So our program office is actually in New Orleans, but I do live here. And we have staff all over. And so that kind of led to the inspiration for this project that we did here in Tampa Bay, which I'll tell you a little about. So our program priority areas are habitat restoration, climate change and coastal resilience, and protection of marine environments. And about 2 years ago, we were awarded a grant from the National Academies of Sciences to do innovative community outreach methods to communities facing climate hazards. And so our grant was about $300,000. They awarded $3.7 million across the Gulf and in Alaska. The goals of our project were to use the innovative engagement methods of storytelling through film and experiential learning through boat tours, which is actually something that we've done for many, many years across the Gulf, but we've never actually studied it. So we want to study it here. We worked with the University of South Florida to see how people responded to these different engagement methods and what we could learn from that. So our target community, of course, is Tampa Bay, which is one of the areas in our nation that's considered most vulnerable to climate change. It's considered an area of high risk and low readiness. Of course, we haven't faced a direct hit from a major storm in over a century, which contributes to that. A lot of population and a lot of very vulnerable areas. And a need for broad stakeholder engagement here and building resilience because people haven't felt that intensity like some other areas of the Gulf have. So what do we know about engagement at What Works? We know that it requires knowledge and an emotional connection and a sense of personal competence and also collective competence. People don't want to feel like they're in it alone. They get very overwhelmed. So one of the things that we did was, the main thing that we did was to make a film, which is 20 minutes long, and I'll show a trailer of it. It's just 2 minutes at the end of this. You can get a feel for it. But we took the perspectives of the people that we work with across the Gulf Coast, a lot of them who have obviously gone through Hurricane Katrina or gone through other major storms, major climate impacts, face frequent flooding, and how they personally, very personally, have adjusted and adapted and what they've learned, and kind of telling that story to the Tampa Bay area. And then we had Maya Burke, who is the assistant director of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, be kind of the narration of the whole video and the voice for Tampa Bay and what Tampa Bay is facing right now. And then we did a series of boat tours, which I'll be inviting you to at the end of this, because we have a little last junket we're going to do in December. Our project team, that's us, but most importantly is our partners. So our researcher was Dr. Rebecca Johns at University of South Florida, who's a rock star. Wildpath did our film. They're the group that just did Path of the Panther and Carlton Ward's film company is pretty well known around here. Of course, the Estuary Program, Tampa Bay Watch, and the cities of St. Petersburg and Tampa, as well as at Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, Pinellas County, other folks helped us as we did the script and figured out what this project would look like to make sure it was locally relevant. These are our storytellers from across the Gulf Coast. You can see where they're based and their affiliations. They were angels for us, and spent several days filming to make something really cool. These are the places where we did the film screenings once we finished our film. So all over the Tampa Bay area, mostly in Pinellas County. And then the boat tours were in South Tampa Bay, leaving from the pier and going down to the Coquina Key area. Okay, the findings. So we did 259 pre and post surveys of the film, and we saw massive increases. We were really careful to make the film very accessible. So we didn't talk about like carbon or things like that in the film. It was very much storytelling, personal relation to the people that were in the film and their stories. So we saw 149% increase in willingness to attend meetings to learn about your resilience initiatives, a 214% increase to work with groups to educate their neighbors, 35% increase in willingness to attend hurricane prep meetings, and a 240% increase to advocate for nature-based solutions to storm surge and sea level rise. Something that's really interesting to me is that there was a shift away from this reliance on state and federal government to be responsible for building resilience, and more of a shift toward self-community, local government, and the nonprofit sector, which, having spent a lot of time working in places like coastal Louisiana where they're constantly recovering from impacts, that is the true story of what actually happens. Everything comes at the community level for the most part. So just some takeaways from the film. It was very moving for folks. I'm really proud of that. And then we did boat tours. We did three boat tours over the summer, had about 100 people come out, a 90-minute tour working with the Tampa Bay Watch and Tampa Bay Estuary program, and then we held focus groups at the end, and then had some common themes come out, which is that people, of course, felt like they understood things better, but also they were very positive and felt like there was something, a need for collective action, and then the recognition of the value, again, of collective action, community action, and their civic engagement to make things better. And then also seeing the area from the water, there was a lot of discussion about the systemic inequity of climate challenges, a lot of wealth right on the water, and then just behind you have communities that are very high risk that don't have those assets to recover. Just a quote summing up a great summation from Dr. Johns at USF about how this can increase local leaders' understanding of climate risk and connect people to their environment in a way that really motivates citizenship. So project outcomes, we were hoping to see increased knowledge of local climate impacts, scalability of the project beyond just this immediate area, and strengthen local planning efforts. And then I was going to show the film, but I also want to just give a few takeaways, specific, three things really. One, I can follow up with our web page that we have that has access to the full film. It has discussion guides, it has handouts, it has the boat tour guides, and just everything's very transparent and accessible there, so it can be shared around with any folks that might be interested. If they want people to, they can just do the screenings themselves. If they want people to come present on it and talk about the film, we're happy to do that. We're also offering follow-up boat tours. Everybody told us when they did the boat tours that we should do these for decision makers in the area and elected officials. And so we're having 2 boat tours, one on the 1st of December and one on the 8th. I think they're both Fridays. And so, of course, you are all invited to go to that. And I gave my cards out to everyone if you're interested in attending, and also follow up. And then we're working with, because we got this great, we didn't really know how people were going to react in Tampa Bay to this kind of messaging, because they hadn't faced a lot of major impacts before, and where were people's heads about their risk and resilience in their role. But what we found is that people are really, really interested. A lot of great turnout to events, and everybody's always asking us how they can get more engaged. So we are working with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, and with a couple of different local governments on project proposals to bring this type of outreach, this direct outreach, strategic outreach, to the resilience planning processes for different local governments to help connect the citizenry in a strategic way, like not just the, you know, typical folks, but also getting the non-traditional folks involved, and building a robust level of awareness and engagement in the resilience planning processes, which we think are really important for the longevity and success of resilience plans in the area. So we are happy meeting with a lot of municipalities in the area and taking folks up however we can be a resource. Sometimes we're going in on grant proposals to work specifically with local governments, and then sometimes we're just serving as a resource on their public communication, how they message on their resilience work in the area, and just helping give our 2 cents through our experience working with folks on this topic. So that's that. And then we were going to show, because it's so much easier just to watch for 2 minutes and get a feel for, I think it's in the middle. Oh, there it is. Perfect. This is less than 2 minutes long.
Here on the Gulf Coast, communities know they're the front line of sea level rise.
We're seeing more water. We're seeing more frequent storms. We're seeing the porosity of storms increase. We're seeing like rainfall dumps.
We have to make people knowledgeable, get them engaged.
We can't just sit back and allow those changes to happen. We want to be in the best shape to adapt.
There's a lot of things we can do, and we ought to do, to make ourselves protected and more resilient and to live with a changing climate.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions? No?
So where is this video available?
It's on we have a web page that has everything, and it's we made it, the whole idea was for people to just use it freely and share it around and post it wherever they want. So very accessible at this point. It's in a bunch of film festivals right now, but yeah.
Is that the website that's on your card?
That is, well, I have to, it's, what is it? What is it? It's that plus / Gulf, and then I think you can get to it. I can email, if that's the easiest thing to do, the link. I can send it to Amber, yeah.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Any other questions, anything?
I'm already signed up for December 1st. I'm looking forward to see you.
You may have seen this presentation before, so thank you for entertaining it again.
That's all right, thank you.
But yes, December 1st, December 8th, and we've had commissioners and folks from Hillsborough, Manatee, all over sign up. They want to come out. They want to kind of see what it's all about. So I encourage you to attend too.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move item 4C, which is the Kaaba Holiday Parade, from the consent agenda to, I guess, to an action item, be numbered.
5F? Is that the one that's pulled?
Mayor, I believe that item's been pulled by a council.
Oh,
Pull that application.
okay. All right. And then item 4E, which is the iWork software, also from the consent to an action item. I think that one is being...
That one's also going to be pulled. We're still negotiating with their attorney over a jurisdiction term.
Never mind.
All right. Any other? All right.
Well, do we want to do the lot split now? Or just wait till it comes up? Okay, never mind.
Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Fryslowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, City Clerk, do we have any audience comments?
John Kurzman,
Please state your name and address for the record.
John Kurzman, Bahia Honda Way South. I'm speaking as a resident. First, I was at a meeting recently and I heard that we maybe were thinking about acquiring, or just maybe as a consideration of acquiring land by Don't Tell Mama. Maybe it would help, with the parking situations at certain times. But then also on Sundays, I happened to notice that by the Lemon Tree Spa, and I'm not blaming them, they just happen to be a resident of the building, they wait until there's like 4 or 5 cars parked in that parking lot, and then they swoop in and tow those cars. And maybe it's better for the landlord to get their split on the towing fees of 5 vehicles, ruining 5 people's days each Sunday. I've seen it a couple weeks now. But maybe there could be a cooperative agreement, like I hear we do with other parking lots, to help encourage just to, let people park. And I think it just really, gives a bad impression to people that are visiting and are just getting towed away by signs that are, the first weekend it was, it was on the ground. The next weekend it's on a pole that's this high, where a car is coming out, which I saw happen, another car is coming in, they don't actually see the sign. So it would just be really good if maybe we can make it a positive thing, maybe do a cooperative with that location, and then instead use maybe some of the money to, again, as we've been talking about, acquire the Corey Landings area, because I've traveled by boat and I really see people love to go on the intercoastal, anchor their boat, maybe spend the night, maybe stay somewhere locally, maybe even sleep on their boat. And if we could have a marina-type facility where people then would come, enjoy the businesses nearby, I think that would be terrific. Another thing I just want to mention real briefly is I rode my bike here, and to avoid Gulf Boulevard, because it's natural, it's just generally more dangerous because you don't have 3 feet often between the bike and the cars that are traveling, and that's the Florida law to have that. I take Gulf winds. And my request is that maybe we tap the brakes a little bit on the Gulf Winds and the Bogosiega Drive projects, because when I look at those plans or hear about them, what I'm hearing is we're actually narrowing those streets. And in the case of one of them, I think we're even eliminating the bike lane. And so we made a law a couple of years ago where we made it that you can't even ride an e-bike on the sidewalk, even if you're pedaling it. And now we're going to eliminate the bike lane. So we're really putting people in a hard place. And I just think instead of narrowing the streets by moving people's mailboxes further into the street and widening the sidewalks, which I agree was part of the comprehensive plan when it was written, it may have been the right thing to do back then. In today's world, I think I would just encourage us to reconsider that it's safer to have bikes, not doing that, and to widen our bike lanes. And use a can of paint if you want to narrow the lane, and give people a wider bike lane instead of just widening sidewalks and spending all that money. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Deborah Schechter,
Good evening, Deborah Schechter, Bogosiega Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach. That was an excellent presentation. And if you've not lived here for a very long time, you may not know that Tampa Bay waterway was severely polluted. And it took more than 10 years of concerted efforts of everyone to clean it up again. My fear is with all of the sewer dumpings that are happening around from St. Pete and some other communities, it's going to be a mess again. So I don't want to have to wait another 10 years to clean up the waters. We really have a great community. Our residents, I always say, even the new people who move onto my community, and there has been many changes. They're always nice. We're so lucky. We have a library that has programs, I'm going to call them world class, because there was one program, Brendan Nolan, who actually lives in this area, who's known all over the world as an Irish storyteller and singer. He was at our library. They have programs for kids, they have programs for adults. You can be busy there all the time. Our recreation department also has excellent programs, and there are pamphlets right back there, or of course, if you're computer savvy, you can just go online and look all of this up. You know, my feeling, and I feel very strongly about this, is I want to keep our community like this. I understand there will be development. I just don't want all of that overdevelopment that we've been fighting for so many years. 75 units an acre. That's just not going to work here. We're already in an extreme drought, and I don't know how that is handled by that many more units. And I think we had a drought in the 80s, so I don't know if it's cyclical, or I don't even know how long this drought is going to last. I think you all know this. There's not been any rain here for probably since the hurricane. But anyway, we do really have a great community with many, many things to do and lots of fun. And I suggest everybody take advantage of it and get involved in saving St. Pete Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion for approval.
All right.
I'll second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowski?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have item 5A, holiday decorations.
Evening, Jennifer McMahon, Chief Operating Officer. Before you tonight is this year's holiday decorations. Last year, we went into a 3-year agreement with Holiday Outdoor Decor. We piggybacked onto Treasure Island's contract in order to do that, and this year's quote came back to the amount that we have agreed upon with them. Nothing changed from last year. I will note that I know we talked about this a few times this year. We contacted Duke back in July. We listed all the polls down to have them make sure they checked. I followed up with Chiquita today on that to ensure that they're doing it. So we started this in July to make sure that we had the electrical on the poles. And then we did try to take this to bid. We had an RFP out to see what we could get, to see if there are other options out there. We didn't have anybody that bid on it. It was towards the end of this year, so we're going to keep that RFP and bring it back in the spring to where I think we can get some bidders on it. I think it was just too late in the year for people to commit to another project. So I know we talked about, I went back into my emails regarding the holiday lights. And again, in July, we talked about doing a survey, have Sarah put things out to see what the community wants. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to get to that before she left, so we don't have that feedback. Be happy to entertain any questions.
Yes, sir.
So do we have commitment from Duke that all the medians on Gulf Boulevard will have electricity?
Medians don't have electricity.
I'm sorry, you said Duke was working on the...
On the poles.
Okay, so...
Where we have the side decoration.
So are we putting lights on, and, sorry, on the poles? They'll have them all working. We have their commitment.
Yes.
And for the medians, we've had...
I have solar lights.
Right.
That'll uplight.
So all the medians will have lights?
Correct.
Okay, because...
We didn't last year, correct.
Right, okay.
So I think that was the issue last year, was that people were complaining that the lights were out. Well, the issue is not with the lights, not the decoration lights, it was the power at the poles. And that's where Jennifer's just trying to stay ahead of this year. So.
Yeah, we started in July with Duke on this.
Yeah.
So as this was coming up, I just followed up again with Chiquita just to ensure we provided all the poll numbers, exactly where it went, the whole list. Mandy and her crew did, so.
So look, first off, just from the documents, I'm not sure we got the correct documents in the package, because we've got a cover sheet for Treasure Island for 22, and then we've got a handwritten document that says St. Pete Beach 2023.
So the Treasure Island one is part of the piggyback agreement?
Right.
Okay. And then what they sent me didn't have a date on there, so that's why I hand wrote that. I probably should have just printed the email where they sent this so you had that documentation. But that is this year's quote.
I mean, I just reiterate what I've said before. I've not been a fan of this approach. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, we are where we are. I know previously, before we signed, piggybacked again with the 3 years, we said we couldn't cut the contract, we couldn't do anything different because we were in the piggyback when it was under Public Works, and then it moved out from Public Works and we piggybacked again. This is one of these things, we spend a lot of money and we just get a lot of flack, to be very blunt. And I know no one's happy about it. And I don't know how we take a different approach, because it's $76,000 and it's a lot, which is a lot of money for a couple of weeks of lights. So they're important. It makes the city look great. We all enjoy it. But how do we need to take a different approach so that we feel we're getting a bang for the buck? I had suggested to the previous city manager that we have a citizens committee put together. If you want to be, it's okay to identify the problem, but let's everyone be part of the solution, so that, because we want to enjoy the lights, we want to enjoy the holidays, we want to get, hey, this light doesn't work, why do their lights look better than us? And so I'd just like to see us take some sort of different approach as we go forward, because this one, I think everyone gets frustrated about it. So.
Right, Mark, and I think I heard that from you, and that's why we tried to put it out for RFP. Unfortunately, I think it was too late in the year for us to really be successful with that. But myself and the procurement manager are committed to putting this back out after the first of the year, when I think we would be able to get some bids on it. And then I think once we get those bids, that's where we can have people review it and we have those documents in front of us. Unfortunately, we just didn't get that this year.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm sensing this is, I'm equating this a little bit similar to fireworks. There's probably a limited number of vendors out there that do this, and they're serving municipalities. So to me, it seems like any other service contract, we need to RFP it, unless we're just getting some phenomenal bang for our buck on a piggyback. And apparently, at some point in time, it was a good deal. Otherwise, I would assume we wouldn't have entered into it. But, going forward, I think it's just, I'm not even sure if it's a committee. Maybe if it's a committee, once it comes out, the bids come in.
Well, there's not a good answer to this, I'll tell you. In all the years I've been down here, to kind of bring up the history, but I get people that say you're spending too much money. I get people that say you're not spending enough money.
Right.
It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. So, I mean, I think we ought to move forward with this, with where we're at. I think Jennifer has a good idea as to how to do it. The big question, I think, is for us, not a committee. It's how much money do you want to spend? I mean, there's a relationship between how much money you're going to spend and how much bang for the buck that you're going to get. So, if we're going to spend the almost 77,000, or do you want to double that? It's...
Yeah.
And when you bid it out, they probably have a menu of services, I'm guessing. And I also,
fireworks.
Yeah, and also the timing is everything on this, like the fireworks. If you want it on the 4th of July, you're going to pay the premium. If you're willing to shift it a day or two, they can give you a little bit of a break. Same thing with these lights. If you're allowing them to put them up early, they'll give you a little bit of a discount from the companies that I've seen. Because there are condominiums and others that do this. They don't want to do it themselves. They kind of contract it out. So I think we ought to move forward with this, but we're always going to get it's not enough or it's too much.
One of the other things that we discussed, and I know I don't think there's anybody here from the chamber, is how do we get the businesses engaged? And if I remember correctly, I can't remember what shirt I wore yesterday, but I think Ms. Schechner actually brought up a concern last year that Gulf Boulevard looked very dark. that our businesses along Gulf Boulevard, particularly, not all, there's some of the hotels, but many were dark, and we're not getting a festive atmosphere. How do we get this relationship between public and private to make the city look great? And I'm hoping, and as I said, Robbins and the Chamber's not here, that we can get better participation this year, because it looks really good. People like it. I think, to Commissioner Frazowski, to your point also, we're compared to, obviously, South Pasadena and Treasure Island, which are much smaller communities. I mean, I think South Pasadena does, what, a mile?
Yeah.
They do their main street, and it looks nice because they don't have to do very much. Nothing against them, but it's just a different environment. We're just different geographically. But if we can get the businesses, and maybe we can chat with Robin to...
We can have a contest like you do for the boat parade.
Yeah,
Right? Have
I
a
think
contest, and we
that's a
can
good
pick
idea.
out the best medium, small, medium, and large
Right.
business that has the best decorations.
The other thing we can look at, and I've seen done in other cities, I don't know if it's appropriate here, is on the islands, the medians, is a business or a person adopts a median and decorates it. And you get a nice little plaque, which turns into a little bit of advertising, and a little contest on who's got the best holiday decoration or springtime decoration, whatever it might be. And I think as we travel around, all of us have seen this in other cities. And this is a way, again, to stir some interest and get participation and make it like a little interesting contest. I mean, I know that part probably is not something for this holiday season, but just in general, for those meetings.
I can send some out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know we had this conversation last year, and I do want to commend the staff for taking the initiative this year. So I know last year it came down to the wire, and there was a lot of grumbling about it because it came down so late. And so to hear that you started in July, it's very good. It's unfortunate with Sarah that we weren't able to get the survey done, but thank you for taking the initiative on that. Do we have a motion?
I'd move to approve and accept the Raleigh Outdoor LLC proposal in the amount of $76,880 for the citywide holiday decorations.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
We have public comment. Terry Orr.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Terry Orr, and I live off of 76th Avenue. A lot of the questions that I was going to bring up was just addressed. The main one was obviously the cost. Another thing is I like to call it classroom participation, and that's when the businesses would have a contest, first, second, third, even all the way to fifth, because there's so many businesses. The holidays are a lot of fun for a lot of people. That is a lot of money that could be used for a lot of people. So if we could figure out a way to do more class participation with the businesses, it would spruce up Gulf Boulevard, some of the side businesses, and also maybe redirect some of them funds to other things that might be a little more needed. So if we can get some businesses on board with that, maybe save a little money in the process, I think it's a win-win for everybody. But you are correct, it's a little late in the season at this point.
Yeah.
But that's what I have to say about that, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Deborah Scheckner.
Hello again, Deborah Scheckner, Boca Ciega Isle Drive. Our holiday decorations, even last year, they gave us a couple of new ones, but most of them were still shabby, lights or no light. And I think the poinsettia is we're particularly in bad shape. You drive through South Pasadena, you drive through Treasure Island, which we're piggybacking off. I didn't see any crummy, shabby, shop-worn decorations in Treasure Island. But you come to St. Pete Beach, and they were there. And I took pictures, because I was really very upset that we pay this much money, and we get, in my opinion, second best. There were a few new ones, and so that was nice. Again, going back many years, when the hotel years were owned by people who lived in the community, they decorated. And I remember the Serrata in particular because they put a little gingerbread house and gingerbread people, and they had lots of lights. Again, just like you mentioned, it's dark. You go to St. Augustine, they are packed at Christmas. When I say packed, you can barely walk because they are decorated with these white lights in the entire downtown. Every business, every hotel, every facility participates. I don't know what that costs, but I will tell you, it makes it very festive and a lot of fun. And if you're going somewhere for the holidays, I can tell you right now, you want to go somewhere festive and you want it to be fun. But I would like to have a quality check, quite frankly, because some of the decorations last year were just a mess. It had nothing to do with the lights. They were very shabby. And we've gotten shabby ones in the past for almost the whole city one time. So we need to, you know, up our game a little bit and force the company to do the right thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you, and I can see Wayne was already taking notes, so thank you, sir. Any other comments? If you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have action item 5B, Pump Station 1 rehabilitation.
Mr. Clark is going to address them.
Good evening, Mike Clark, Public Works Director. Pump Station 1, the rehabilitation is pretty much almost the last project we have over about a 7 or 8 year period where we've been rehabilitating the entire system of the city. It's a very large project, but it is our master pump station. It's where everything flows through and to the county for treatment. What's before you today is a recommendation for a sole source purchase of a Xylem pump by the city. And a couple of reasons for that. The sole source piece is because Xylem is the authorized dealer for this type of pump system in the state of Florida, including our territory. And it is the same pump that we have in the other lift stations and pump stations. And so we have continuity of our training, our parts and supplies and materials, the contractors that repair these things for us, and how we service them. And so if we stay with the same pump type, same pump system, same manufacturer, we don't have to stock a whole bunch of different things. We don't have to have a bunch of different manufacturers coming out here on contract to service these things. The second piece is, at a pump purchase this large, we save a good amount of money on the taxes. And it also, for reasons I'm not positive on, for some reason the municipality gets a little better of a schedule of delivery than a contractor does. And so for all those reasons, we think this is a strong recommendation for your approval.
This is a pump station that pumps to the county?
Correct.
This is the one, Mike, if I remember, by the school at the end of Boca Ciega.
That's correct.
I call it the house pump station.
Yeah.
Right.
It was built to fit into the
It looks nice.
aesthetics of the community, to the extent we could put lipstick on a pig, so to speak.
Mike, isn't it correct that all of our sewer from the other stations flow to this one?
That is correct.
And then this feeds that subaqueous pipe that goes up through Treasure Island through to where we had the little, where it all comes together and then goes over to the northeast station, is it?
That's correct.
So subsequent to this, then I think we still have a few years till we have to address the subaqueous pipe.
Addressing the subaqueous pipe is sort of a series of steps. We've already done a feasibility analysis to determine its expected life, how many years it's got left. That gave us 12 years, and we did that actually, I believe, when Mr. Saunders was the city manager the last time. So now we're about a third of the way through that timeline. So we're going to be looking at a design and an update to that feasibility. We did do a feasibility study that is that location the best place to put the pipe, or are there other alternatives to run the pipe someplace else? We've been through that process. That was a tremendous amount of coordination with our sister cities and the county. So we're pretty much at the conclusions that where we are is the best place to be, and we're going to have to add a second pipe to our system. We're not going to take the existing pipe out of service. It will become a backup in case of emergencies, but we'll put a second pipe in place in the next 6 years or so.
What is that location of that new pipe? Is that going to be sort of parallel to the existing pipe then?
It'll run almost exactly parallel, yes, that's correct.
Regarding this item, I didn't see any warranty in here. Do you know, there was a link to something which might have had it in there, but...
There is a 5-year warranty.
Okay. And it's not unusual for a municipality to buy this for sales tax savings, but when I've seen it done before, there's already a contractor on board, so the contractor takes full responsibility for accepting it, unloading it, doing all that, so it's kind of like a regular contract. How does that work here? Because we don't have a contractor on board yet, right?
That is correct. So we're working that with the delivery of the system to bring it to us. We may have a contractor. I assume we'll have a contractor by that time, and then we'll make those arrangements when we get the contractor on board.
If we pay for it, they're going to hold it on site until we have a contractor on board to deliver it and install it?
No, they'll deliver it. We'll bring it in, and we'll secure it on our site as far as the plan goes right now. But when we get a contractor on board, we start that discussion. Then we can flex and do what makes the most amount of sense at that time.
But we're still looking at 5 to 6 months anyway from this point forward.
Correct.
Yep.
And the warranty kicks in on shipment?
On delivery.
Because the payment's interesting, because the payment terms, they want the money from shipment date.
They want the money when it's delivered. Within 45 days, I believe.
45 days after shipment date.
Well, the shipping process, I mean, if it takes a week, you know, I'm not counting those days too precisely.
I mean, this does make sense to do this because there are still issues with procurement on certain items, so I think staying ahead of it is a wise move. The last thing we want to do is have a contractor on board and then we're sitting around waiting for the 6 months for the equipment. So I think this is a good thing, as long as we're covered with a warranty and we're not liable in any ways where the contractor can kind of blame us because it was our equipment, not their equipment type of thing.
And $100,000 savings is pretty significant.
Yeah.
Last question, just the bid that was, the documentation in the packet shows that the bid expired 30 days from the date, which was 30 days from September 12th. So we're still good with the price?
They have extended.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I'll just stay for
Yep.
this one.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the sole source purchase with Xylem Water Solutions USA and Company for flight pumps, controllers, and associated pump package in the amount of $1,413,000.
Second.
City Clerk, do we have any audience comments?
Terry Orr.
If you'll please come to the front.
Thank you again. A couple things come to mind. First of all, obviously, there's other contractors and companies that can do this work. Is that solely with this company, and how long ago was that arranged? And can this be addressed at you or Mr. Clark? Who do I address this question to?
You're just making a statement. You're not asking questions.
How many companies were involved in the bid to do this pump station?
This is not a question and answer session. You're just making a statement, sir.
Okay.
If the commission chooses to answer it, they can, but generally you're just making public comments.
Do any of you care to make a comment on how many companies were involved?
Mayor, if I could help. It's a sole source, and the reason why it's a sole source, as Mike described, is that years ago he decided to align all of the equipment, so all of the pumps are of the same manufacturer, so that when our people are trained, when they have parts and things like that, So you typically don't want to sole source things if that's kind of where you go, and I think we all agree with that. However, there's a cognizant effort that was done here for the good of the city long term.
Okay.
Also, as Mike explained, this is the single vendor. That's correct. I mean, there's only one vendor that provides this.
It's not unusual I see it with a lot of, I'm an architect, so I do a lot of projects. You'll have the same vendor for locks because you don't want to have a different locking system in each building. You want to have the same system for your AC and your controls. You want to have, it's very typical. Unfortunately, and I think maybe if you're going this way, you may be paying a little bit more, but it's in the overall good of what you're doing to do this. So that's the reason why you do this type of a thing. It's called the sole source, so it isn't bid.
Okay.
Could I add something?
Sure.
This is not really excuse me, this is not the contractor to actually do the work. It's just to buy the equipment. And I think Commissioner Frizlowski stated it very, very good that it's important to keep all of your equipment consistent throughout all your different pump stations, like Mike said, so we don't have a bunch of different deals we're working with as far as equipment, a bunch of different people that are trying to service them. But we will be going out to bid for the construction side of it. But this is just a sole source purchase, and there is one company that handles this region for this particular type pump.
Okay. And then next comment I guess I would make is the 6-year for the new pipe that he mentioned. So what is the standard size, or what size pipe is that backup pipe going to be? How much disruption is that going to cause to the community? And is that cost separate from the $1,400,000 plus for the workers, street people, everything that goes with it? So is that going to be more money down the road for the community that we're going to have to pass, or you guys vote on, to get all of this done? Because you're only buying the equipment, he's going to store it on site.
So the pipe, if I may, the pipe, as we've discussed in previous meetings, and Mr. Clark, please correct me if I didn't learn correctly, but I had a good teacher. The pipe is a separate project in the future, and to answer your question, it's additional money, and it's a different project, additional money. This pump takes the sanitary sewer flow and sends it through the pipe. How big is the pipe and the actual design, and as Commissioner Frizlowski asked, do we know where it will be yet? Still TBD, but that is at 5 to 8 years out. But it's very important. Pump Station 1, as Mr. Clark said, it takes all of the sanitary waste from across the city and sends it through this underwater pipe. So we've talked before, and Mr. Clark, of course, is on top of it, to make sure that nothing ever happens to that pipe. We've inspected it. You never want to have a leak. And you also don't want to take it offline, because then our sanitary flow has nowhere to go. So short answer, future project, different budget, different money, TBD, because it's not all spec'd and scoped out yet. But conceptually, this is what we need to do, because you want to stay ahead of that pipe. You never want to let that pipe get past its useful life.
Agreed.
Because you never want to be in a position to have an accident.
Agreed.
And we also have another pipe. We might as well put it out there so everyone knows we're talking pipes. There's a pipe that comes across from Harborside, the north side of Harborside, which is technically St. Pete Beach. Brings the sanitary waste from there over to Pump Station 1, meets up with the rest of our flows, and then goes out. So that's another pipe that he's got in his project plans, and he keeps a very close eye on, for all the same reasons.
Okay, and as time goes on, this will all be laid out for everyone?
Yeah, we'll be in a public meeting. He also asked about the disruption. There won't be any disruption because there can't be any disruption. This is where our sanitary sewer goes, so Mike's done a great job. In fact, in the past, that house where the pump station is was a new purchase. Our pump station was actually right next door where the current park is. And we were very fortunate that next door neighbor's house was for sale. We decided to buy that piece of land, which set us up when we had to redo this pump station. So it's actually worked out pretty good, and then that local community benefited by that little park at the end of the street.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Terry.
you much for your time.
Any other comments? All right. If you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we have action item 5C for the Fifth Avenue stormwater improvements. Mr. Clark?
The 45th Avenue stormwater improvements was first identified in a study in 2019 by Hoff Associates, I believe. It was one of 12 projects and is one of about 4 remaining of those 12 as we've been working our way down the priority list. But from the time that the study was performed until recently, the first task associated with analyzing the stormwater situation in this neighborhood was to determine whether or not we could improve upon the existing stormwater system, which is all gravity flow. And this neighborhood has exactly one outfall structure, and it's between 2 very large houses that have almost no space between them. So upsizing the pipe to allow for greater flows that we are experiencing in that space was really not a very good alternative. We'd almost be looking at having to buy one of the 2 properties. So we did a feasibility study. Could we possibly find a different location to move the gravity pipe and still service this neighborhood appropriately in a 25-year, 24-hour storm? And we commissioned an engineering study to do that. And we got about halfway through that study, and we had a big engineering meeting. And it was clear at that time that the answer to a gravity system improvement was no. It was not going to work. We are too flat, and there's just no place for us to be able to do it. And so rather than continue the study to its, to a conclusion that we already figured out, we cut that off and didn't spend the rest of that money. And then we went back, we said, okay, now we know we are in a stormwater pump situation for this neighborhood. There's no other alternative on the engineering spectrum. And so where do you put a pump that services this neighborhood? Well, there's really only one spot, and it's the bridge going over to the Bogaciga Isle. And so we have the space to put a pump station in, and we're talking about a pump station very similar to what we have in size and capacity on 3rd Avenue down in Paso Grill, which was installed during the street program phase 2. So the cost of the pump station is not small, and it does require some different configuration in the inlets, some different, we're going to improve the gravity flow. I always refer back to Paso Grill. When you go down Paso Grill, you can feel the car going up and down. Well, those are artificial slopes that we build into the street in order to improve the drainage off of the street, and we do that on purpose. And so there's that element in this project also to improve the stormwater drainage and the flows and the velocities throughout the entire area. And then we get to the pump station itself. We're always looking at water quality improvements as part of the larger region, and so there's a baffle box involved which separates out the solids and the phosphorus and the nitrates, and so that's always a good thing for our aquatic folks out there. And then, of course, it serves as a check valve so the bay water at high tides and storms does not flow back through the system up onto the streets, which is what happens now.
Thank you. Questions?
Any of the data that was gathered in the previous study, will that be useful for what we're actually moving forward with?
Yes, all of that study, all that data, all that topo, all of that will be incorporated into what we're going to be continuing. But it was not complete to the design standards that we need, so we're going to do a little bit more. But everything we've already done is money that goes into this project that we're not spending twice.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The estimated time to complete is 282 days, 9+ months.
And I highly doubt that we'll make it.
It just seems long. I mean, and I'm obviously deferring to you on the what's involved in the work effort. It just seems a long time to address a problem, and is there a way, and I'm just focused on addressing the problem, not saying anyone's got anything padded, et cetera, because I don't have certainly expertise to view that, but how do we get the problem solved? Is there a way this can be expedited to get to the problem and the solution quicker? And it just seems like a long time.
I'm happy to review the contract schedule. It does have a lot of time in it. And I can talk to the contractor about that. Essentially, it means they have to reassign personnel within their organization to put more people on it. The number of hours that it's going to take to do it is pretty much the number of hours it takes, and how many people do you have, what's your timeline. I'd like to point out item number 13, which is permitting, and remind you of how long it took us to permit the First Avenue Pier, how long it took us to permit the Passive Grill seawall, and all of our other water structures that we have done. So and we're permitting with the Corps of Engineers, the county, and the Southwest Water Florida Management District. And that doesn't include other sub-permittees under the Corps of Engineers that they may bring in, Fish and Wildlife Service and things of that nature. Sure. So the possibility that we're going to finish this project in 282 days, in my opinion, based on the past performance of the permitting agencies, is about zero.
What is our role in involving the city with the contractor in moving the project along? For example, we have a jetty out here that we approved the contract for First Avenue 6-7 months ago. We had to wait for turtle season to end. Then we had a project of dune building. Folks are still asking me, when's that project going to take off? So what is our role, the city's role, in urging contractors to move forward with projects once they're under contract?
Well, in the case of the jetty project, the permitting took several hundred days, and we have no role to play other than to complain.
Okay, but the permits have been issued, right?
Yes, they have.
Yeah, so, and it's still not.
Right in time for us to not be able to do construction because of the turtle season. We lost an entire 6-month window. We were ready to go, but we couldn't mobilize the contractor fast enough.
So now, do we do something to mobilize this contractor?
Well, this is a design.
No, but I mean, do we do something to mobilize this contractor right now? Is this
the jetty?
Yeah.
He's going to be starting, I believe, in the next week or two.
Next week or 2 weeks?
I believe it might be next week.
And again, I'm just kind of trying to feel for what the city's role is in moving the contractors forward on getting projects done. Do they call us and let us know when they're going to be out there, or do we contact them and say, hey, look, what's your schedule? When are you starting? We got to let the residents know. You know,
we never lose contact with our contractor. We're talking to them all the time. In the case of the First Avenue Pier, there was really no need to chat with the contractor. About once a month or so, we'd say, hey, you guys still good for a schedule in November? And they say, yeah, we still got you boxed out for November and December. And so
November or December?
And December.
And December.
It may travel into, I mean, when you're talking 6 months out, the contractor is not going to give you a date certain 6 months in advance of when he's going to show up on your doorstep. They got other work to do, and you're going to have to fit into it. So we maintain our contacts, we maintain our relationships, we maintain the conversation, and as we get closer and closer and closer, everybody starts to tighten things up. And so they give us a date certain. I believe it's next week he's going to mobilize.
And the reason I ask you these questions is because the residents want to know. They ask me, and I just say, I don't know, we're under contract. The permits have been pulled, we're under contract. I don't know what to tell you. So part of my asking you this question is so you can let the residents know what that process is, how these things move forward. When Vice Mayor Grill is saying this project looks like it's going to take a long time, maybe some of the residents' perception is we hand the baton to the contractor and they just let us know when they're going to be out there if they need something moved or they need a barricade or they need something from us. Other than that, it happens when it happens. And maybe that is the way it goes. I don't know.
No, not at all, no. Throughout this process and every process that we do, we have weekly meetings with our AE firms, and we talk about all the projects that they've got. and how they're moving along. Sometimes we have delays and sometimes we have acceleration based on their ability to move their schedules. But this is a contractual relationship. They put 282 days down on the paper, and to move that 282 days forward is a bonus for us at no cost. To move that 282s back, they're going to have to come and justify why it is they can't make their date. But we're going to be having this conversation. If you look down on this items 10, it's called the 30% submittal. That's the first target that we get where there's actually a set of drawings for us to look at. And to make sure that things are cited properly and fit properly and we're headed in the right direction, and all that. We'll post those on the website, on our project site. People can begin to look at it and get a feel for what it's going to look like. Then we're going to go to 100%. It doesn't take much time after 30% to move to 100%. Once you make the big decisions about where things are going to fit, then you can move pretty quickly to the finish line. The permitting doesn't even begin until the 100% design is approved by the city. And so that's when that starts, and that's the one that's got me kind of concerned. But as we move through this, we are in contact with the AE firm. All-Star Bryce is the new project manager for us, and we talk about this project and the other 6 or 7 that they have going on simultaneously for us. And so we never lose sight of where we're at once things get rolling.
It would be nice if the, how should I say, the expedited permit requirements that are being looked at for building permits could be applied to some of these types of permits.
I could not agree more.
If I could add one thing to that, I think you made a good point. Our residents want to know what's going on, and a lot of times it's something simple like the turtle season. We have to wait, and that's one of the discussions that we've had internally over the last week or so in interviewing with our communications person that we're hoping to hire soon is that type of thing, to where we can stay out there in front of all these projects, letting people know when we know, okay, here, yeah, it's been approved, and here's why it's going to take longer, whether it's turtles or whether it's permitting. And I think if we can get that word out there on these projects, it'll really help a lot of these questions.
I agree. We do get a lot of questions, and I mean, I'm sure we all field them, and there are unique circumstances for all of them. The pier was a really strange one, because that was when you're doing stuff out in the Gulf of Mexico, and then we didn't even have ownership of that. We found out there was all kinds of things that came up. But if we could have something on our website, because people are asking us whether it's the pier or whether it's underground utilities or whether it's Boca Ciega Drive or Gulf Winds Drive, and we know schedules change. So I know probably hesitant to put out dates, but I think we could at least put tentative dates and update them as we know they're going to change. And they're looking for major milestones. I think they're looking for design start, design end, construction start, construction end. Not a complicated schedule like we have here in our packets. Not that this is that complicated, but they're just looking for the real simple dates.
I would remind you that we have about 100 projects that we're moving through Public Works with 3 people. So communications, you cannot communicate enough. You can't over-communicate. Communication is great, but which do you want us to do? Do you want us to engineer, or do you want us to communicate? I can't do all of it to the point where people are not going to have their questions. We can always do better, and we certainly take that as a takeaway. My entire staff is watching tonight, and so we'll talk about that tomorrow.
If you ask me, I'm talking about more of the major projects. I wouldn't expect 100 of your projects for you to be feeding all that information, but I think the ones I just named are probably the ones that sort of come top of mind to most people. I'm sure there are others, but
Jetty, Seawall, Gulfway, Gulf Boulevard undergrounding.
We can tick them off one by one, and then there's all the other stuff that goes on that people get upset with. For example, we had 15 water breaks today. And all those folks out there are calling us and asking, what are you doing about it? What's going to happen? How long is it going to take? 15 in one day. So that immediately wiped out about 4 hours of all of our time starting at the very first thing this morning. My Monday didn't turn into what I thought it was going to be.
That was reclaimed?
Yeah, 1 potable and 14 reclaimed.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to derail this into a headcount and staffing discussion. I mean, that would be between you and the city manager. And if we need to do a budget adjustment or if we need to address a hiring, we just went through a budget cycle. So if we need to readdress it and reopen it, let's do that so that you have the resources that's necessary to deliver the services that the city needs and the residents want.
I appreciate that, and I believe I heard the city manager talking about a communications director, which would be outstanding. We'll have our standing weekly meeting 3 days a week to update all of our schedules. But again, communicating the good news about the projects that you all have approved for Public Works to execute is one of the more fun things I do. Even when I'm talking about a delay, I'm still talking about a wonderful project that's going to bring such improvements to our community in all aspects of utilities and infrastructure. So we absolutely want to do that to the best of our ability. I'm all in.
Please.
I do have a question about this, the item before us in terms of the fee. The fee's $181,400. How do you analyze the fee? It seems high, but is that do you go with? I know the state has a fee curve that they can look at. Do you typically look at that? And
I do a couple of things. I take a look at the number of hours that each trade in the engineering firm is going to spend. So how many hours are the surveyors going to be out there in terms of how much work they're going to be doing? How much time is the guy going to sit behind the GIS CAD drawings and actually put pen to paper? How much time is the project manager going to be spend talking to me and going out there? How many visits are we going to have in the field? So I look at the individual tasks and I think to myself, if I was doing this project, is that in the ballpark? And I'm not going to narrow it down to like the nearest 30 minutes or so, but a week looks pretty good. Okay, that's a lot of work for a week for one person. So I look at it to see if it's balanced. And then I take a look at the cost curves that you're referring to, and there's a general rule of 10% design to construction. In this case, I think we're getting a pretty good, getting a little bit of a bonus here because of what Commissioner Grouse brought up earlier. We already have a lot of information that we're pulling into this design from our previous task order. So that cost is additive or not in this cost. But we're looking at probably a $3 million project, give or take. So we're well within our 10% on this one.
$3 million for construction or $3 million added? I mean, either way.
$3 million in construction.
Holy cow.
The pump station itself is going to be $1.5 million plus in that neighborhood, and then the conveyance system and the road structure.
Wow. And this is one project for a neighborhood. So I mean, this is.
And as we move through to the future, this is not going to be the last pump station that you see. It's going to be the first of many. Like I'm talking about 30 to 50. That's what the island is looking at in the next 25 to 35 years.
Which is also not just looking at initial costs, but you're talking about maintenance issues over time.
We haven't even gotten around to maintenance yet.
Right.
So there's staffing and all that's going to come along with it. Right now, we have 2 people qualified to work on our pump systems, both storm and sanitary. We're in a world of hurt because one of them's getting ready to deploy. So we can face the challenge. Don't panic here. We got this under control. We have a plan. But I'm telling you that we are very well balanced in our resourcing. And as we continue to grow, we're going to have to continue to assess our resourcing wisely.
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor. Do we have a motion?
Yeah. I move to approve expenditures with Half Associates Incorporated for 45th Avenue drainage improvements design in the amount of $191,400.
Second.
City Clerk, do we have any audience comments?
We do not.
If you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Fryzlowski?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we have item 5D, lot split 23079 for 102 15th Avenue.
Mayor, excuse me, the applicant has requested this be continued. They could not be here at this meeting, so they are asking it be continued. Was there a date certain on that?
They haven't requested a date certain, so
This is a second continuance. Right?
yeah, this would be the second continuance. The only advertisement involved, I believe, is just on the property. It's not publication. Is that correct, Amber? So we would, I think, I don't know. I think what we would have to, you could put it on the next agenda, but I think the sign needs to be updated, and they would have to incur that cost. I think the city puts those signs out, right? Yeah.
Right.
Those are the yellow signs with the date.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our meeting next week, and then the next one's 12/5, right? And 12/5 is going to be solely designated for one agenda item.
Correct.
So we won't hear that on 12/5.
Yeah. So if they don't make it at the next meeting, then they're going to have to skip over.
So the
12th, December 12th would be the one after the 5th.
It's 12.
I would recommend just continue it till that second meeting of December.
Yeah.
Which is the 12th?
12th.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion to continue?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I don't think we had a date in the motion.
Sorry, so I moved to continue this item to the date certain of the December 12th, 2023 scheduled City Commission meeting.
Second.
Any audience comments? City Clerk, if you're pleased, do a roll call.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Fryzlowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next we have item 5E, comprehensive plan review, discussion, and action. So we had a workshop with the two firms that have submitted for review of the comprehensive plan. We had some discussion afterwards. I think where we last left it, where we're talking about the two different firms and maybe narrowing the scope for the actual review process.
I agree. I think that's what we ought to do. I think it ought to be focused instead of having them go too broad with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we want to focus it? What exactly do we want to tell them and give them to do?
I was
Specific
thinking,
emphasis on.
yeah, I think it's Gulf Boulevard and Corey Avenue. They also mentioned, Calvin Giordano mentioned that they have some other specialties. I think Lambert was their economic side of it, and they had a legal side of it. I think that would be important, and I would assume if we all agree, then the city manager could get back with them and ask them for a revised proposal for it to then come back before us again.
I think the issue we discussed and we've heard loud and clear is the residents are asking us to relook at the density parameters within the plan. So to narrow it, to include that. And how
Yeah, and I guess I'd say density, intensity, height, the whole kind of issue.
Right.
Density, right.
But I think it needs an economic analysis needs to be tied into that. And
absolutely,
I mean, it needs to be a fairly broad economic analysis, but I think with the focus on what is based on adjusting units per acre down. Probably not up, down. At certain thresholds, what are the economic advantages and disadvantages to the city, to the residents? And what does it look like on the other side? Where is that tipping point where it's time to condo these things out? And obviously, we're going to be managing that economic data within a certain economic environment that's changing over time. So, you know, to the extent that they can give us projections from historical projections over, like we look at market projections over, as investors do long term, they don't look, you know, like a bull bear markets over 10-year spans and 20-year spans. What did it look like in these 10 years? What did it look like in this 10 years? Something like that, where we're kind of, instead of what are the economics of it, and they come up with some numbers, none of them really matter to us. So I'm not sure if I'm articulating it in a way that we can translate that to the vendor to have them do that, but that's kind of my mindset. That's my thought.
And also, I mean, the legal implications of it too. I think we want to make sure that we're not putting the city in any kind of, you know, legal issue. I did talk with our city attorney about this because I wanted to make sure that I didn't say any of this and offend him, whether, you know, he, you know, was going to do that. And he thought it'd be a good idea to have that. And he said he's done this before where he's had a team and then he's still just acting as our city attorney, kind of giving us advice. I don't want to.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to bring that up today. If I know if you choose Calvin Giordano, and they had identified an attorney that I'm aware of that's very good with land use and issues like that, but it might be once the proposal and you get actual numbers and things like that, it might be you might get more bang for your buck if the city actually retains that attorney as special counsel directly instead of having that with the consultant, and that way, you know, there's a little bit more direction, oversight, and also that ability to have attorney-to-attorney conversations that need to be had. And the topics that came up were, you know, moratoriums, Bert J. Harris, things like that, you know, want to be covered. But you don't have to decide that right now, but it's something for you to think about if you go with Calvin Giordano. That, I mean, I think either way, I have no problem. And I think it's important because as city attorney, we're doing all kinds of things. And I think you want an attorney experienced in land use and zoning that is going to be, you know, embedded into this project, very, you know, very concentrated.
I mean, I didn't really think about that option, but I think we do need to maybe decide tonight because we're going to ask them for a proposal. So what?
I think you do need to pick one of the two consultants, and then you need to narrow the scope.
But if the attorney was working for you, I kind of like that from a couple avenues. You could kind of keep
be working for the commission.
Because I just see the attorney bills kind of could go crazy if it's going through whatever planner is Calvin Giordano or anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And
we need to have the attorney-client relationship with the attorney, not the vendor.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So, but wouldn't we it's important to know that now, because if we're going to ask Calvin Giordano for a proposal, they would keep everybody on their team except for the attorneys, because
it'd be easy enough for me to find out what their government hourly rate is. It's White Sirota is the law firm that they work with, and the attorney that they identified, I know her. I've worked with her. She's very well known throughout Florida, and I can get their proposal as what their government hourly rate is, and go that route. And you know, you have a lot of special counsels. You have labor and employment. You have bond counsel. You have you know. So this would be, you know, someone that would be specific to that scope of work. Once you get started.
Should we, before we get too far on scope, have a discussion about which firm or just formalize that discussion of which firm. I think I hear a consensus, but to make it official and
that's the first thing you need to address is which firm.
Yeah.
And then I agree with what Andrew said. I think it's important that we retain the attorney for this review. There's a lot of legal issues when you're dealing with your comp plan, so I totally agree with that, and we can discuss that. We'll need to come back and look at the scope, bring that back to you with a revised proposal from whoever you choose, and we can deal with those as we bring it back.
Okay.
But I think first you need to choose which one you will use.
I thought maybe there was a consensus last time that Calvin Giordano was pretty clear, but I guess we need to formalize that.
Yeah, you just couldn't make a decision at
I
a
mean,
workshop.
Yeah. Just say, in my view, I think they both were very good firms. Both had different strengths, but I think there's a better match with Calvin Giordano for what we're looking for, and the experience that they have that the other firm has different strengths, and we'd be better with a better match with Calvin Giordano. Just my view.
I agree.
I agree.
Seems like we have consensus on that. He was nodding his head.
Yeah.
We need a motion?
Yeah.
I'd move that to accept, select Calvin Giordano and Associates for the purpose of working with the city on our comprehensive plan.
Second.
Do we have any audience comments? Great. If you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Fryslowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Mayor Petrella?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So do you need any more direction on that?
I think we have a pretty good direction on what we need to do. We may have some questions, y'all, that we can contact you individually when we're working on the scope, but
Okay.
We'll get that together and bring it back.
Okay, good.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Next we have item. I keep looking at 5F. Next we have item 5F. But that was removed, so.
Yes.
Twice. All right, 6 ordinances. 6A, first reading of ordinance 2023-15.
An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, related to membership into the Florida Retirement System, providing for correction of scrivener's error, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Matthew McConnell, Assistant City Attorney. This ordinance is part of the requirements of the documentation we have to send to FRS to implement that for the firefighters. So this was just, so it'll be first reading. We have second reading next week as well. We've already coordinated with staff how this is going to work and relaying the documentation to the state. So this is just part of that packet.
So is this a new requirement?
This ordinance?
Yeah.
This was part of the documentation that were sent over, I believe, in September.
Okay. So
I can't speak on if it's a new requirement. It's just something that was made
because
aware.
we didn't talk about it before. So
Correct.
so we're still on track. We'll do this. We'll have the 2 readings. We're still on track to allow the firefighters in
December 1st.
the 1st of December.
Correct.
Still on path.
Correct. Luckily, the days worked out. Amber coordinated the advertisement, so the next reading, the next ordinance is going to be second reading of the other ordinance that Bonnie was here for last time. But yes, we're still on track for December 1st.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any comments or questions?
I'd just like to say thank you to Amber and also Matthew for shepherding this through and kind of picking up the mantle here and carrying this forward. We appreciate it.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-15.
Second.
Any audience comments? If you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Fryslowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Mayor Petrella?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next we have item 6B, public hearing, ordinance 2023-07.
An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 66, Pensions and Retirement, Article 4, Firefighters Retirement System, Division 1, generally, Division 2 Administration, and Division 3 Benefits of the Code of Ordinances of the City of St. Pete Beach, amending Section 66-253 Membership, amending Section 66-252 Benefit Freeze and Maximum Benefit, amending Section 66-291 Parent A Board of Trustees, adding a new Section 66-297 Plan Closed to New Firefighters, Participation in the Florida Retirement System, providing for codification, conflict, severability, correction of scrivener's error, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Thank you.
And Mayor, Bonnie Jensen, who was the pension attorney, went into depth at last meeting on first reading. This is just second reading. Again, this is part of the FRS thing that we're trying to do for the firefighters.
Any questions or comments?
I had a question on the business impact statement. So this and why this requires a business impact statement. And it's just more general. It's not really related to this, the content of the ordinance, but since this is the first time we're seeing this and seeing this form, and
it's a good question. So as you know, SB 170 requires these for ordinances unless they meet one of the exemptions on page 186 of your agenda. Now, it was Bonnie's opinion, and I agreed with her, that it does meet one of those exemptions, right? Because the whole point of this is to implement an agreement with the state, which is what we're doing with FRS. However, she did go through the trouble of answering the questions anyways. So essentially what you could do with this statement is if you check one of those boxes, which is an exemption, on page 186, you don't have to answer the remaining questions because it's exempt from the business impact statement. However, Bonnie went on and answered the questions anyways. So it's not necessarily required for this ordinance, but we wanted to get you used to seeing this because you'll see one for the boat ramp coming up, and you'll see one for the second reading of the ordinance you just passed on first reading as well. So this is something that you're probably going to see regardless whether we check a box or not, just to get the city ready for it. And the clerk's done a good job of setting up something on the website as well where she puts all of these there for the public to see.
so how did we come up, I mean, it's the first time seeing the form, so how did we come up with this form and the content, the questions that we're answering, and the evaluation that we're doing?
Yeah, so I believe there was a few meetings ago we talked about this. This came directly from the statute, but it was also the clerk's office and our office putting things together from the Florida League of Cities and other cities to try to morph something that was applicable to our city. But this language comes verbatim from the statute.
But he does have a good question. I was wondering the same thing. Is this something that we created this form? It wasn't like the state said, okay, you have to conform to the law. Here's a good thing to use. Would have been nice for them to do that.
Yeah.
The state didn't, but I mean,
No, they won't do that.
They'll come up with a form. They'll come up with a form someday. It won't make any sense.
When they come in and tell you did it wrong, then, oh, here's the form you should use.
They give you the language and let you make the form.
There was a lot of resources out there with local. Florida League of Cities was a big one.
So
other
these
jurisdictions may have different looking forms, but they all say the same.
So just for clarity, these boxes in the bottom of the first page, that for the exemptions, those come right out of the statute.
Correct.
And if you qualify for that,
Then you don't have to answer one
you
through.
don't have to go to page 2.
Correct.
And the boxes 1, 2, 3, and 4 are also from the statute?
Correct.
And then, of course, the answers, then that's where it becomes a bit,
Correct.
it's our judgment and evaluation on how to answer those questions.
Yes. I would say the most involved one that I can think of coming in the future at some point would be the beach ordinance.
Yeah.
So that one's going to take some serious time, which is going to delay the reading of the ordinance, but that's going to be a pretty involved one.
Okay. No, thank you. Because I think, I know my discussions in the Big C also, with the cities are looking at how do we...
Don't give them our form.
How do we write
It's ours.
Yeah. Copyright, can we put a copyright on it?
Yes.
The watermark on it?
No, we'll share with anybody.
No, that's good. So thank you for putting that together. And,
All right, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 2023-07.
I'll second it.
Any audience comments? If you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Fryslowski?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we have item 6C, public hearing of ordinance 2023-09.
An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 94, Waterways, Article 2, Watercraft, Section 94-33, Restrictions on Use of Public Property, providing for codification, conflict, severability, correction of scrivener's error, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. So if you all recall, this ordinance was brought before you, I believe, in August with the parking rates adjustment. It was one of those things that just fell through the cracks, to be honest with you, with some of the turnover at the city. So we're bringing this forward to you now. This is related to the Don Cesar boat ramp, the changing of the times, and establishing a commercial permit process for businesses using the Don Cesar for commercial operations. So nothing's changed from first reading. The times have still remained the same. However, that is up for discussion if the commission does want to change something. And then again, there's a business impact estimate at the end of this that staff worked through.
Could you just summarize the time changes again so that everyone, because it's been a while since the public has heard this one.
Absolutely. It was, the times there were from 5 to 11. There was kind of conflicting language in our, I want to say in our parking section of our code. So now it's 5 to 10. So 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. the boat ramp will be closed every day except for holidays, where we do allow it for an additional hour.
And this affects the Egan boat ramp also.
Right.
Correct.
So
2 hours.
2 hours to midnight.
till midnight. So holiday, public, so public holidays, nationally declared public holidays, 5 a.m. to midnight. All other days, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's reduction from 11 p.m. back to 10 p.m.
So on federal holidays, you're allowed to use the boat ramp after 10 until 11:59. Every other day that's not a holiday, it closes at 10 p.m.
And that's for the public as well as for businesses? Or just businesses?
It's
all
for
use.
all users. However, with the language that we added in subparagraph G and having a permit process, it's going to give the city the ability to kind of understand what businesses are using it, set some parameters, and at least have a check and balance system as opposed to a free-for-all.
What would be the effective date of the permitting process if this passes tonight?
I believe once it's passed, staff is ready to implement. I think right now they've been using right-of-way permits, so I was going to work with them to try to create something, unless they feel like there's another permit that they could potentially utilize. But I'll default to Wayne on that too. I'll make sure we work with the community development department.
Okay.
Appreciate you doing this. It's a step in the right direction with the issues they're facing.
Yeah, no, please.
On the, no, I think it's good. It's definitely need to address the problem that we've had at the boat ramps and late night and et cetera. So this is great. The economic impact, page 2, bullet 2. Could there be an economic impact to the businesses that now we're saying we now have a curfew? Before they didn't have a curfew, because it's, yes, the $50 for the permit that we'll charge.
Potentially. Right, because I found out we don't really charge for right-of-way permits, so it gives us leeway to charge a permit fee, but I haven't decided, and I haven't spoken to Wayne on if a permit fee will be charged.
And again, since the first time we're seeing this form and filling it out, is there a loss of revenue for the companies, although the companies weren't permitted to begin with? I'm just thinking out loud here. They weren't permitted, so we don't really know, but could we be accused of a loss of revenue by tailing back in the hours, which we do need to do, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't need to do it.
I mean, yeah, that's hard to say.
Well, I think we're talking about one specific entity that's, and they would just have to...
I mean, he could be accused of a lot of things, respectfully, to be honest with you.
When a governmental entity imposes a restriction, inevitably, somebody, because of that restriction, is going to get less access, make less money, but we weigh that with the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
Exactly.
And in weighing that, we're willing, I think we've agreed that we're willing to take on the risk that some folks may make less money, but we think it's important, so important, that we're gonna do it.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. I would even argue then that the property values stay stable, and the stability of the property values of the neighborhood, that value increases more than the decrease in one business. So I think to look at it in totality, it's a good thing, and it's hard to quantify.
It is. And that's one thing that we went through is, what argument would they really make for having to bring boats in an hour early? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, my grandmother always told me nothing good happens after dark. So, I mean, well, what's 1 hour sooner, you know?
We're going to face this sort of an issue with all kinds of things. Yeah. You know, the beach ordinance is one of them, but there are all kinds of issues where there is going to be an economic issue. Probably you could argue both sides of that coin. So
it's kind of subjective.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and there's not much in the statute to really go off of.
Yeah. So my question wasn't so much on should we or should we not do it. Yes, we should do it, and for all the points that have been made, I'm really into how do we, since now we're trying to comply with a new statute, is the statute requiring us as a municipality to start thinking about, well, there is a potential income hit to a business, and is that what we're being asked to do by having to do this analysis in this form?
Yeah, I don't think that language is in the statute, right? It's like loss of income.
No, I think conceptually, Vice Mayor, I do think that this requirement is making cities think about the domino effect of passing ordinances and what that effect has on businesses. So I think conceptually, yes, to answer that. I do think that they want you to start thinking about, okay, we're always so quick to pass things. Maybe we should take a step back, think about it, and say, okay, who is this going to affect in our business community? So I do agree with that, but yeah, like you said, the statute is...
Yeah, so when they first started talking about this bill, you know, there were, I mean, it was down those lines, you know, like, okay, we have to like put all these assumptions together to determine this. So they ultimately, when the spaghetti is unraveled up in Tallahassee, they come up with these simple, fairly straightforward and somewhat measurable, you know, direct compliance with it, you know, so that's the permitting part, not, you know, you don't have to make all kinds of assumptions of, okay, now that business can't come here during this hour and launch, and we don't have to go out and ask that business, well, what do you charge for? I mean, they realize eventually, you know, that would be, you know, administratively so burdensome that it's impossible. But as Matthew was saying, you know, it does make you think, and as I said before, you know, I know there are other jurisdictions that I've been around, large counties that, you know, had that in their own requirements before this statute was even adopted. There'd be a cover memo. Wayne may be familiar with some other counties too, but there'd be a cover memo saying, you know, that had that business, just to make you think about it. You know.
Right. I think that was the intent of the legislature, and I think it was good. That, you know, as a government, you can't just be passing things without thinking about how you're going to affect people
and who you're going to affect.
Right, negatively or positively. Yeah. So,
okay.
I'm guessing they were pretty purposeful in how they asked these questions to not make it too burdensome on us, but it does make us reflect and think before we just pass things.
Sure.
Well, and to the extent that something would be enforceable in court too. I mean, yeah, some of that.
Thank you, Matthew.
Pleasure.
Do we have a motion?
Public comment. Congressman.
John Kurzman, speaking for myself, the Honda Way South. First off, you know, I appreciate this ordinance. I understand the need for this kind of ordinance. I understand the disturbance that's been caused by people that live near this boat ramp. The concern I have a couple concerns. First off, I just find that the city is getting into a pattern, being forced into a pattern of commercial interests abusing public resources. And then what happens is we have to make rules that affect citizens as well. And there may be people that take advantage of the boat ramp at night, are quiet, behave themselves, and now are going to get affected by this. Not me. So I'm not complaining for me. Maybe this means nothing to change from 11 to 10. I have no idea. But I'm just expressing the concern that we get into this cycle of this happening, because it's happened in other resources and things we use. The other thing is that when we talk about commercial interests, you know, just to make sure that we're not pulling things in that we don't want to, I know that the dock repair people, they'll often bring the pilings along those ramps. Not Don Cesar so much, but Egan. And do we intend that they're going to need a permit to pull a pile, you know, to launch a piling onto one of their barges? So I just want to make sure that we're addressing that kind of question. And then when we do have the requirement, do you have the requirement to say no about certain activities? I mean, we're requiring a permit, but do we, you know, do we have teeth? Or, I mean, I guess we can negotiate a little bit, but we still can't tell people that, you know, they can't have the Nazi parade. So, like, what is it that we're really going to be able to accomplish with the process? And then the last thing is just simply the title of the ordinance. I mean, I just personally always think that the title, I believe, is supposed to help someone who's busy, is supposed to be able to read the title and understand what the ordinance is about. Restriction on use of public property can mean anything. And I had a hint that it said watercraft and waterways, but, you know, if they said things like restriction on use of ramps to be changed to the hours and permits for commercial use, things like that could just really help people that maybe we get public input, you know, that would know what it's about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'd move to adopt ordinance 2023-09.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Grouse.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill.
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Marone.
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we have item 7A, virtual participation.
Yes, thank you. In my memo, I've kind of outlined my research based on what our other municipalities who answered my question indicated that they're doing, and then the handful of Attorney General opinions on this topic. I did prepare it and had a discussion with the legal team, and I also shared recently with the city manager on what we had opined on in regard to what we've researched and what we've concluded, and that's all outlined here. We all agree that we should outline it in our rules and procedures as stated in the Attorney General of 2006-20, which allows commission participation in a workshop or special meeting where no official action is being taken. And this would mean that we would not have to be concerned if the electronically made votes are counting, especially as it pertains to quasi-judicial. Make sure that you're hearing, whoever's participating electronically is hearing the same presentation. There's no delay. You have all of the same information as if you were present in chambers. And then there's no requirement, if we were to follow AGO 2006-20, we wouldn't have to be concerned if the participating member meets the quote extraordinary circumstances as outlined in other AGO opinions. That's just what the attorney, city manager, and I consider, but of course whatever you all feel is appropriate is up to you.
We had lots of meetings during COVID, and was that under a special rule at that time? So, but that ended under declaration of emergency. Once that ended, that stopped.
That's correct.
Is there a way to request an AGO opinion
Yeah.
on this? Because, you know, and I've mentioned in previous other meetings, and how do we first adapt technology and make our meetings and this process open and inclusive to people? Not everybody can come and sit here, and we move forward and allow, we've worked on our broadcasting capabilities. How can we, and we have more participation, I think, these days than we did a few years ago. And how do we attract people who want to eventually sit in one of these chairs or be on a member of our committees, our advisory boards? And some people, I've had personal experience where people say, look, I'm not always here. I'd like to get involved. I can't commit. Can I go through Zoom, for example? So how can we make this more open and inclusive? I mean, I read through it, and first I appreciate all the work, because a lot of research and work went into this, so thank you very much. This has been a bit eye-opening. I found it interesting in the AGO 2020-03, which was the one, I guess the governor had asked for that during COVID. We're starting, referencing Black's legal dictionaries and what does it mean to be present, et cetera. But it can, to me, it can work, and I know certainly municipal activities are different from the private sector. Private companies are global companies, work remote. They have board meetings that are around the world, people around the world, and it works. And I know we've got different legislation. But can we get an opinion? Because to me, it just seems so simple to be on, as the mayor was, and during his vacation, and we appreciate him. I mean, that was one of those meetings, I think, was in the middle of the night, but to allow, I think we get a better participation, better inclusion, and I don't know what the process is to get an attorney general opinion, if that's a big deal, or
it's a legal question that you would ask to the Attorney General, and basically you'd have to specify with as much exactness as possible what questions they want answered, and I mean, I don't know how quickly they turn them around. I personally have not asked for an Attorney General opinion. I've gotten informal opinions from the Commission on Ethics and the Attorney General's office, but never a formal opinion on it. I mean, there's a couple of questions here in this. One is about the quorum. We know that you have to have, the quorum has to be done physically here. So you can't use virtual technology or electronic technology to create a quorum. But the question really is, like, what if one or two of you, three of you are here at quorum, or two of you have exceptional circumstances where you have to be out of town? Can you participate virtually? Now, the great thing here is that, as you mentioned, during COVID, the governor issued the executive order to allow for quorums to be made virtually, electronically, and local governments pushed the technology finally. They finally invested money into the technology and actually started doing it. And then the second question is the public participation part. So one is you all, as officials, conducting your business that way. And then the second question really is, to what extent do you want the public to be able to participate? I'll give you an example. As a hearing examiner in Collier County, I run my meetings both in person and virtually, and the county's just been able to do that for quasi-judicial hearings. But I'm like a hearing officer, just one person, and people log in. It does take some technical people in the room to be able to manage the muting and getting people online, and frequently people will not, they'll not be able to handle the technology on the virtual end, and you'll just have to hang up on them, But I think those are the two main questions.
So what am I missing about the conclusion by Ashley Moody, where she talks about the unique nature of the COVID-19, but then says, however, without legislative action, they do not change the existing law. It's my opinion that unless legislatively or judicially determined otherwise, meaning a state statute or a judge issues an order, we can't have a quorum at a meeting where one of the participants that would make the quorum is not here.
Because it's the law, and she's basically punting it and saying.
I mean, that's
saying, So that question has been answered. She's going to say the law says your quorum, you have to have 3 people here to have a meeting, and it can't be virtual or electronic or by phone or any other.
So we wouldn't be asking her opinion about that.
I think it's more like the extent of, no, not the quorum, the extent of others who can't be here, have an extenuating, because one of the opinions talks about it has to be an extenuating situation. And this was, this was a long time ago. It was almost like a phone. It was before Zoom and all this stuff. But I think the extent would be like, what are the requirements involved in making sure that due process is adhered to? So you're here, all 5 of you here are hearing from, staff, from the public, and when you're making decisions, either legislatively or quasi-judicially, those are 2 different things. One, you're making policy with ordinances. The other one's you're applying policy in a quasi-judicial manner. And in that situation, there's more need for due process in making sure that, sitting as quasi-judges, that if somebody is virtual, that they hear everything, they have everything, that there's that it's seamless, that there's no oops, I heard that wrong, so I voted the wrong way, or something like that. Am I getting off track, Amber? No, she's going to yell. She usually does this when I'm off track. But I think I don't think anyone's really asked the Attorney General, is it, what are the different things that need to be in place? Exactly, because there are different types of items here. I mean, you have ordinances, which are legislation, you have quasi-judicial things, then you have just business that you're taking care of, like contracts, approving contracts and things like that. So each one of them have different levels of due process and rights and responsibilities. Like I'd say quasi-judicial has almost the highest one, where you're dealing with one property, like the lot split or something like that, a zoning, you're affecting rights and responsibilities.
So we're already giving people due process, because if we weren't, you'd be telling us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be saying, hey,
we make sure. Yeah, the minimum is that things are advertised. They're advertised on time. They're noticed and properly. I think we're doing more than what the statute really requires, but we make sure that you disclose things, that the meetings are conducted properly, that the public is allowed to speak, and things like that. So here, it's a contained environment. It's just when you go virtual and power goes out, or something, what do you do with you have to think through all these contingencies. Now, I will say your Zoom technology in this in the chambers has gotten much better than when I first got here. There was some interference with the audio, et cetera, but it's gotten to be a lot better. It's helped in situations like when I needed to participate in a meeting, or you had Bonnie Johnson, the attorney for pension. That's nice that she doesn't have to drive over here from Fort Myers or Fort Lauderdale for a 3-minute presentation. You know, that helps a lot. So.
So for the quorum,
You're never gonna, unless the state changes that, and I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, to be honest with you. But I think the real question is, like, what if someone has to be out of town and it's work related versus they have a family member that died? You know, I think that's where I start thinking is, like, when are you talking about convenience versus like a necessity? You know?
If you want to ask the Attorney General opinion, I mean, I wouldn't ask them about public participation. I mean, that's unique to each municipality, in my opinion. That's going to be a decision that we make together with the consideration of who needs to be involved in running that Zoom meeting for public participation, to include muting, unmuting, raising of the hands, monitoring, who raised their hand first, who showed up first. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, I had to do it where I came from, and I did not like it, and I refused to continue doing that. And I can tell you that we have one IT human being that would be doing that, and I don't think that that's very fair to him. He does a really good job, and I think that he would do it, but I think you need to just understand and know all of the facts before you make that decision and push that onto someone without their having a discussion with them.
There's a whole infrastructure that was created in the court system for people to both counsel on both sides to appear virtually with schedules, and the judicial assistant and IT staff in the courthouse had to make the arrangements, and it was, you know, 5-minute hearings on calendar calls, and people waited, stood by on Zoom, and were called up one at a time. It is, as you're describing, Madam Clerk, a significant IT undertake. It can be done. I mean, it was done in mass for 2 years. It can be done.
Yeah.
It is significant infrastructure, and it's designated folks. Now, you think of the courthouse, they're doing it all day. So they have the resources, and they designated those folks to do that. So I think we need to first step back and say, are we providing the access that our residents expect? You know, I know we're going to be talking about ADA in a minute, and there's some folks that are shut-ins. They can't get out of the house, and they would probably want to speak. And can we make arrangements for those folks to do that? So that is a unique circumstance that I think that we need to make accommodations for, and we'll probably talk about stuff like that with dovetails into ADA. But for the folks who can watch us on TV, who can make it here, and they can make a decision that they would like to come here and speak in public or not, or they can send emails in, and we all read them ahead of time. Do we think we are being, and we may be, but our question to us is, are we being deficient in some regard, and are we not servicing the residents like we need to from I'll call it a due process standpoint, but it's not an official due process standpoint. It's just giving everybody their say. You know, I tend to think we really do give our residents the opportunity, full opportunity, you know, to watch us on TV, to come down here, fill out cards, send in emails. A lot of folks say we can't be here, so we send the email, and we read them. So, I defer to others.
So I think, as the city attorney said, we are meeting, I mean, just to be clear, we're meeting all the requirements.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
above, and above some.
Yes, yes. I mean, we send the agenda, I think, to the library, you post it out here. I mean, there's a lot, things are in the newspaper. I mean, since I've been here, no one's tried to argue, notice problem, notice deficiency, or something like that. So it's not that, and I agree with Amber. I think the public participation, we're meeting that and some, and I think Amber, the city clerk's done a great job with organizing it. you know, like with the cards and that wasn't done before. It was just sort of like line up, say what you want. You know, now you have a record of everything, and it's really very, very normalized with the rest of, like, with other local governments, and I think it's working out really well. I think the real question is just, you know, what happens once in a while when an elected official or a board member, someone who has to make a decision, you know, a decision maker, just cannot be here. And just absolutely cannot be here. And do you want to? But I don't think you're going to get past the quorum issue.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's circumstances where that a public official who can't make it says, I'll make a motion that we continue this if we can continue it, so that he or she can be here for that. We've considered that in the past, you know, hey, this is a cup, it's in, you know, your district. I'd like to be here for it. I can't be here. Can we move it to the, and we see if we can make accommodations. I mean, we do have those emergency situations, but I think that's the rarity. I mean, I haven't been here that long, but I haven't experienced it to the extent we haven't been able to push something to another meeting to accommodate, you know, one of the folks that just can't be here.
Yeah. I think in probably, maybe in my lifetime, you know, local government may be like the courts. You know, the courts screamed and yelled about it, as Commissioner Marone said, but they adopted it and they run it and they do a really good job. And maybe the technology will be good enough so it doesn't require a whole army to run it, you know, at some point where it's easy enough for municipalities to be able to conduct their business and do it, you know, virtually. Who knows?
All right, thank you.
So what's before us? What do we have to decide on here?
I just feel that I'm going to get more and more of the questions, and I want to be able to tell whomever this is what the commission adopted. I don't want to have to bring it to you all every single time, okay, we have this request. I want to be able to default as much as possible instead of always having to figure it out.
You know, my thought is, unless it's an ADA request, that we operate as we always have until we see some technological change, I think, that allows us to make adjustments. But right now,
is there a specific issue that's come up is that because we have, even for ADA, we have leave a voicemail, send us a video.
Right.
So if you want to, and I always tell residents, your three options are send us an email, leave a voicemail, send a video. We will play the video and the voicemail. We will not read the emails, right? And then we do have the ability. So I think maybe the only difference between what we've been doing so far versus what sounds like you're proposing going forward is if an elected official or a board member is not present, they do not get to vote. If I'm understanding, the only difference between what we have been practicing versus what you're proposing moving forward is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That would be correct. And the reason the question is kind of like why or what prompted or whatever. Well, now we have a more efficient Zoom, right? That just recently became something that we can use pretty effectively, like Andrew was saying, and it's very useful. And so I just kind of wanted to be prepared. And I guess my concern and what I've kind of shared with Andrew before is the voting. That's always such a gray thing. Like, you don't count for quorum, but you count for a vote. That nexus doesn't line up for my brain. That just does not make sense to me. If you want to appear virtually and just listen and not vote, I don't have any angst about that. It's the voting, but you don't count for a quorum. That just does not. That if we were to ask any question, that would be the question, especially as it applies to quasi-judicial. That to me is like here, right? We need to make sure we have everything squared away, lined up, and documented appropriately. So quasi-judicial probably would be the top thing for me, where I would just be super uncomfortable. I understand that, you know, the mayor was able to do it, and we did, Andrew had you acknowledge that you could hear and everything, and I think that's great. But what if it cut out? You know, that kind of stuff is where my concerns come, because I want to make sure that everybody who is participating is here and can hear, and the applicant has a fair, and the city staff has fair, like it's just all across the board. And that's kind of where this navigated from.
So is it possible then for, well, then it gets a bit more complicated, for, depending on the type of hearing, so quasi-judicial hearings, no virtual option, other types of hearings, as I think the city attorney said, regular business contracts, you can participate virtually and you can vote and your vote counts. Or something like that. I'm just trying to build in some flexibility for people.
I think I would feel much more comfortable if that was the decision. It's a hybrid, right? It's like I am kind of making me feel a little bit better, and probably your legal staff a little bit better. But then I can also understand what you're saying too. Like, you want to approve the minutes? Okay, yeah, fine. You know, or the schedule for 2024. Okay, great. You're virtual. You know, but when you get into some of the other things.
Right, I'm not suggesting we at any point push or take risk against legislation that can turn around and cause us a problem, cause difficulty, potential difficulty in the future. And that's really just, and I brought this up, I've had this discussion several times, but I have to defer and make sure we don't try and solve one thing and create a whole big other problem.
Well, the worst thing that you want is to have someone challenge something that you've done on a due process issue. Because all you do is you come back and you do it again, and you've wasted a lot of time and a lot of money
and effort.
And that's what the action would be. Like, that, you know, you didn't know, you know, you couldn't hear, you voted wrong, or didn't hear all the evidence, things of that nature.
So is this something we put on the shelf for 6 months and look at it again? Or are we too early? And
I'd like to, why don't you give me a little time to talk with Amber this month, and a little bit more, and like sharpen the, maybe we can come up with a better, just give you here are the options that we're looking at so that we can lay it out.
We're not the only city thinking about this. You could tell by that polling.
Yeah.
And so shouldn't maybe this a better way to go through like Florida League of Cities and Florida Association of Counties and get with the legislature and make it a legislative act that would just clear it all up? I mean, we're not the only ones thinking about this.
I wouldn't think so.
I think the last
Seems
thing
to me it'd be good to go, instead of St. Pete Beach doing it, have it go through, you know, our organization, the Florida League of Cities, that I would imagine they want to tie.
Attending virtually, I mean, it's almost like bringing up the issue, because since the question about an official participating in the opinions, the technology has changed since the opinions were made.
Right.
You know, like, you know, I think one of them was when it was just on the phone, and you know, and now it's so much different.
Yeah, even the 2006 one that we're really referring to is
ancient from a technology standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what don't, Amber, can we meet and bring it back? Let me think about this a little bit more, because if it's okay with you.
And I'll reach out to the Florida League of Cities and see what they've got and what they may or not be working on. Just.
So ironically, I was going to not be here today. I was going to be virtual, but it got delayed by a day. So I'm going to be out of town for the rest of the week. So it's just kind of ironic. And if we move this meeting along quickly, I could probably stay for the rest of the meeting, but I've got to catch up with some things. So if I may, you may see me step away if I need to here in just a little bit.
Okay.
Next
we have item 7B.
You have one public comment, I'm sorry. John Kurtzman?
Real briefly. John Kurtzman would be an honor speaking for myself. Sometimes when you're making comments, trying to make a suggestion, it can come across as a negative about other things. And this is just a perfect opportunity. On this item,
virtual. I mean, I just have to tell you that I've felt that I'm stepped into the future when I come and try to work with the city virtually. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, I just went back to New Jersey and had to deal with a public meeting there. It's like rubbing rocks and stones, rocks and sticks together. I mean, this is just amazing how well this whole virtual program has been. I've participated as a beach steward. I've participated virtually to provide input, videos, all sorts of things. It's just fantastic. And I think, I hope you guys all just recognize how great this is. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, next we have item 7B, ADA discussion.
So this is another one of my items, and you can see that I began to work on this after we received a concerned call from a resident, visually impaired resident. So I wanted to kind of understand, well, what is our job in that realm? What's our responsibility as the public servants? And then how can I help facilitate some information from the businesses to the residents? Well, you can see over the period of time how that's just navigated me into this whole world, right, of things I just didn't even know about. And I was very grateful that I had so many people willing to help us and talk to us and share with us, and I was just very much like shocked. So I'm not going to read my memorandums obviously to you all, but the gist is after meeting with the ADA coordinator from the city of St. Petersburg, that's a large city, right? So his ideas and the things they do are definitely not necessarily going to be here, but at the end of the day, the law does require all municipalities to meet these 4 standards, right? I did take some time to research if we have anyone posted to meet the grievance requirement, and we do not. So that is definitely something that we need to do, and I think we could do that pretty quickly. And I provided you with a list of different municipalities, and you can see it's not all human resources, it's not all public works, it's not all city clerks, like it's a range, and sometimes there's more than one role that's assigned to assist with the ADA. We are also required to do a self-evaluation and develop a transition plan. I did speak with the chief operating officer, and she informed me that we've had in the budget some dollars over the years, and we did hire someone in 2016 to prepare it's supposed to be a transition plan, but there it says it's a partial self-evaluation of city facilities. So that is one component, and then your transition plan is another component. I don't know, we've seen different pieces, her and I have seen different pieces. At the end of the day, we don't see a transition plan, and even if we did have one from 2018, we would need to update that, right? So I prepared on the agenda, I had a few questions that I would like to have from you is, who do you want, what position do you want to be your grievance person that's going to take those complaints, much like I did, and facilitate some type of resolve. And then you can see where I'm asking you if you want Pinellas, the Lighthouse of Pinellas, to come and speak to our residents and speak to our business owners. Do you want them to help us prepare a pamphlet that we can give to Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce? Or I'll go hand them out myself. I don't care, as long as we can get the word out of what is required and what you can do and what you cannot do to allow these people with disabilities to live normal lives just like the rest of us. And I really did focus on the visually impaired, but I learned that the deaf community is not as open as the blind community. They don't like to be called disabled. I learned that. They don't really want to be lumped in with that kind of stuff, so they didn't really give me any type of feedback. But the blind community was very open and they're really welcoming. So I just want to bring that to you so that we can kind of close the door on this part and move forward to making sure we're meeting what we are required to meet.
As far as who to designate, I mean, that might be a question for the city manager if he has any, I mean, to me, just, I'm thinking code enforcement, not that those guys need any more work to do, but, you know, do you have any thoughts on who might be able to?
Well,
it doesn't sound like it would be like another full-time position, rather just a designated person that.
no, and we did have someone designated back when I was here before. We did the self-assessment. We hired, I don't remember the name of the company. We did hire a company to do the self-assessment, and we did have a transition plan, a preliminary transition plan, and that's what prompted the commission to start budgeting I think it's $50,000 a year to work through that transition plan, because there were certain, if I remember correctly, there were certain guidelines and certain time periods you had to meet under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I don't know what happened to that program. Looking back, I don't think we ever spent any of the money or over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's important we do gear that back up. Amber did a great job in summarizing what we need to do. I don't recall who our ADA coordinator was back then. I believe it was in Public Works with our engineer, is there engineer technician, I think, might have been, but I'm not sure on that. But like Amber said, there's a lot of, different cities you can look down the list. And but as far as a recommendation, I don't have a recommendation. I'd like to spend some time with Amber on it. I know this is a subject she's very interested in, but we would need to come back for an action item at some point. But at least I believe we would. But I'd like some time to spend, and I think we can come up with a plan.
Would sorry if I put you on the spot, but would this be something the HR manager that we're looking to bring on board can spearhead and be the coordinator and then figure out what we need to do and then come with the recommendations? And
possibility. I think we need to look at what the transition plan needs to be, what the grievance situation is, and come up with who we have that would have the time and expertise to handle that.
Because traditionally, the expertise lies within the HR community. Not saying they have to take on the workload, but because there are a lot of requirements, as this great piece of work that the city clerk did for us, what's required, and the technical compliance, et cetera. And then that manifests itself as you bring it down into, as you build projects and ramps and sidewalks and all sorts of the physical side of it requires a whole nother set of skills within the engineering community.
Yeah, when we did the self-assessment, I mean, there were things like the crosswalks, the sidewalks at the intersections.
Right, all that.
All that has to be considered, and you need someone with that expertise, and so give us a little time to work on it, and I think we can come up with a good recommendation.
The good thing is, as we've updated facilities over the years, this is not new. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, so. But I venture to say that Fire Station 22 doesn't comply in several ways, so it'll be good when we get that done. It'll be good to get that done, because then it will comply.
Thank you for your hard work on that, Amy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really.
If I may, so it seems part of it is an educational issue. Yeah. And so I've read the one email and the one complaint. In this particular instance, it was a seeing eye dog with a business. And I would just like to say that since I've been here 8-9 months now, I have received dozens and dozens of calls from residents about dogs on the beach. And I think as you're looking at an educational piece, it might be worthwhile having something that instead of the sheriff giving out tickets, is giving them a pamphlet that shows them the disservice that they're actually doing to the disabled community by saying, oh, this is a service dog, right? Because the reason that we have a lot of issues because people are taking advantage of the situation because they think that we have no teeth and we have no way of actually enforcing it. We do. Sheriff is not, I understand his position, I understand the challenge of that, but I think that part of the education is, you know, we've had one instance with one business. I think the chamber can certainly help us with the education part on that end. But I think the larger problem that we have is on the beaches with guests, with visitors, with tourists, right, that are continuously abusing that. And the harm it's causing, not just to our residents, but to actual people that are disabled and do need that service. And now they're being lumped in with everybody else who's just being a bad citizen.
Yeah, I mean, visually impaired people that are using seeing eye dogs, they're not going to be running up and down the beach because they're not there to provide the service that that human being needs.
Yep.
Right? So I mean, I specifically asked that because I know that's something that we've talked about here. And so when I met with Lighthouse Pinellas, I asked them that question, and she's like, no, you're not going to see dogs running up and down the beach. That's just not. And that's not what those dogs are specifically trained to do either.
Yep.
So you're not going to see that.
Now, we could improve our enforcement without writing tickets by having a law enforcement officer or code enforcement officer who's wearing the colors, who makes contact. We're not even having anybody that makes contact with the dog owner on the beach to communicate with them what they're doing and how it's against our ordinances, and going a step further to what the mayor said, doing a disservice to those who need disabled dogs for their disabilities. So we're not even at the level where we're communicating with. There's no communication with the violator. And we've got to figure out a way to fix that.
Okay. Section 8, reports. Commissioner Frzlowski, would you like to go first?
Okay.
If you have anything?
Thank you, I appreciate it. I have a semi-emergency I have to take care of. There is a Don Cesar Property Owners Corporation meeting on Wednesday at the Don Vista building. Let me just double check, at 6 o'clock. Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, so I'm going to miss it, but I mentioned that to Betty. She's here in the audience. Other than that, I'll wait till the next meeting where I have some other Civic Association meetings and holiday parties and all that kind of good stuff coming up. But if you'll excuse me, I need to run right now. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, City Clerk? City Manager?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. I did have a meeting last week with Duke Energy representatives. Talked about several issues. Talked about the undergrounding and what will be happening once we finish ours on the city's part of that, and talked to them about how important it will be to keep us informed on the scheduling on that. Of course, the other issue with that will be getting the other people off of the poles, not just them. So that led into the discussion on the what we call stud poles that we have quite a few, and 70 had been identified. 30 some I think had been taken care of. They've got another 11 ready to go now. So I impressed on them the importance of getting that done quickly. Again, it's the same issue of they're waiting for some other user to get off that pole. So I've asked them to let me know who that is, so maybe we can put some pressure from Marion to try to move those a little quicker. There's two bills that are working through right now, House Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, that impact if you remember the Senate Bill 250 that stated cities could not make any changes to their land development regulations until sometime in 25, I believe. Is that it, right?
Yeah, if they were in the cone, yeah.
Right. So There are 2 bills working their way through. I think it's important to keep track of that and see, because it is going to take away that 100-mile radius, if you're all familiar with that, on who's impacted, and actually specify certain counties. And what they're showing now, our county would not be in that group. So it's probably a good thing if it does keep going. That would give our commission the ability to make land development rule changes. The last thing I have is, and we're moving quickly with trying to fill a couple of positions. One position that's extremely important that we're trying to fill quickly is our HR administrator position. We've been interviewing. We've actually gone to a second round with some finalists on that. One of the things that we noticed during this is that is the only position we have in the city that's actually called administrator, and I don't know why that came about as a name for, and if there's no opposition to it, I'd really like to just change that title to director rather than administrator. It won't change the salary. It'll be in the same salary range, same duties, be reporting the same way. So I think that'd be important to put that person at that level as far as the title is concerned. If no objection, we'll move forward with that. And
I have no objection to that.
No objection.
that's all I have. Thank you.
City Attorney?
Nothing for me today.
Commissioner Marley?
I've spoken with the city manager after having a meeting with some folks over in Vina Del Mar about their constant power outages. They have half of their power underground and the other half's not undergrounded. Of course, they would like it undergrounded. I told them, after I talked to the city manager, I talked to the folks that I was talking to, that we do not have money in the budget for this fiscal year for that. There are other undergrounding projects that have been approved and are underway, and other folks in other parts of the city that are looking for that. Also the underground is very expensive. So I've talked to the city manager about maybe reaching out to Duke to see if they can do some hardening of the lines, if they haven't already started in Vina, so they would not be continuing to have, on a beautiful sunny day, a power outage for 6 hours. Especially when people are working from home these days, it's brutal. I also talked to some folks out there about the speeds of the vehicles on West Vina, and maybe proposing at some point in time the least intrusive reminder on the road that we need to slow down, and maybe it's the little bumps that just rattle, so it's not, the fire department's not going to have to worry about going over speed bumps or anything like that. And in 2 different spots, but I've talked to the city manager about it, and we're going to be at least advancing that conversation. The dunes. Jennifer has been doing a phenomenal job of her redundancy efforts to try and keep people off the dunes. I will remind everyone that while they see the beach looks perfectly fine and they feel like there's nothing wrong with walking on the beach because they know they will not be in the dunes, that does not mean the beach is open and it's okay to do that, because what it is doing is it attracting other folks who are not respectful of the dunes, who now believe, well, they're doing it, so I can, the beach must be open. I mean, these people are ripping the yellow caution tape. They are walking past barricades that say, and then I ask them, I said, what do we need to put up? Well, they're out there, and they're out, I mean, they are. And some of them are my neighbors, and I said, look, that's it. It's an example you're showing. We're trying to get the beach open as fast as possible. I will also say, for those who've heard rumors that after November 1st, we can put up the barriers on the west side of the dunes and open the beach again, and that's some type of date of demarcation. It's not. We have to get permits for the Department of Environmental Protection to put those barriers up. Once we get those permits, we will open the beach. And that is the last, I think that is the last hurdle. Is that right, City Manager? That's the last hurdle. So please stay off the dunes. I was in Sunset Beach the other day and asking folks what is their experience and how are they keeping people off the dunes, and they said, we can't. They're running on the dunes. They're having the same problem that we are. So hopefully, you know, we get those permits, we get the barriers up, and people have been asking about beach access. We have walkovers that still exist. However, some walkovers were removed. There were paths created when the dunes were built where those walkovers used to be. Those paths have now been filled in with sand, and they will rise up along with the dune, and people will traverse over them in a path that's going to be marked, and you will traverse over that path in the sand. So that's how that's going to be for now. If that's good, I don't know that that's going to be a permanent solution, but at least to get the beach open. Obviously, we're all pushing for beach renourishment, which may add 100 yards of beach to our beach, at which time maybe when we have walkovers, we'll know how far to build them out. And where, you know, what type of pitch they should be and for the stairs and all that. But I think it's premature right now is where you know, I know the city attorneys are working very hard to move forward with the Army Corps and see if we can do something to get that ball rolling. We had a very nice event over at the Gulf Beaches Historical Museum on Saturday. I know Vice Mayor Grill was there. I think the mayor was there. Both you guys beat me there. I want to thank Holly Young and Tia Hawkinsmith. They are on our Historic Preservation Board. They volunteered. I want to thank all the volunteers over at Gulf Beaches Historical Museum, including my wife, Lisa Marone, who helped at and all the volunteers we had. Also, the Bayway Butcher Shop and Hookin' Ain't Easy with their fish bread. And we had a fish bread contest. Very nice brass band. So it was a really good event, and the weather was awesome. So, I think that Jetty, I've gotten as much information to the residents as I could get from Mr. Clark today about when the jetty operation, the repairs will begin. People are anxious about that, but they do understand that the dune project took precedent over the repair of the jetty because we had to get those dunes in place and the county was ready to move. So we got a lot going on down there, and people are starting to come back in town. We're going to start getting busy again. So hopefully we can get that beach open real soon. That's all I have.
Do you know what the date for the bonfire is? 14th December?
Yeah.
Great. Just real quick on your Vina Del Mar issue and the dunes issue. One of the things that we have available as of October 1st is our discretionary spending with the sheriff. Might be worth finding out what the busiest times for the dunes is and just posting a deputy up for a couple hours.
We had one on Saturday. Jennifer had arranged for special duty, but I think that, yeah, for now, I think we're going to have to step up that assignment there.
We did that Saturday and Sunday, I believe, this past weekend from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Great.
And we'll probably be doing it again this weekend also.
And maybe one for Vina? Or just the car?
Well, you know, I was thinking about the speed sign, but I just don't know that there's enough room on West Vina for that speed sign because there's no sidewalk. It's a very narrow road.
Is it on East or in West Vina?
It's West Vina.
Oh, West Vina is easy. You just put a cruiser on one of the 5 streets over there.
Is there an HOA can send out an email? Slow down. I mean,
yeah.
As a start, it'd be.
Yeah, and that's why I said, you know, we want to see if we can figure out the least intrusive way without creating infrastructure to get the speeds down on West Vina.
So there's
here all the time, right?
It's mostly residents, correct? I mean,
Correct.
There's not.
They build up speed coming out from the Julia Circle area, coming south, and back in the afternoons as well, coming back north.
So I've had this in various parts of District 2. Transportation Department has a process, a documented process when there's an issue. We've got 1 or 2, I think they use some sort of radar technology now instead of having the rubber strips on the road to get a report so we can get measurements and then based on that to take it to the next step to put in some sort of before a physical device goes in place. And I don't know who's coordinating that, but we...
Yeah, the commissioner talked with me about it, and we're looking at some options.
Yeah, we have that equipment. It's been eye-opening. Because sometimes it's worse than you think, and other times it's not as bad as you think.
Yeah.
But there's still the outliers, and one person going 40 and a 25 is one too many.
Yeah.
And you have it.
But we do have right here in the corner of 71st, right? The police cruiser hangs out there every few months,
Oh,
for
yeah.
a couple of days, and he just pulls everybody over. Generally doesn't give tickets.
Gentle
But
reminder.
It was out today.
gentle, and especially once he looks at the driver's license, he's like, come on,
Slow it down.
and that.
Especially if it's purely residential,
And it is.
you should be able to
Plus,
address
if you get pulled over, and then all your neighbors see you sitting there on the side of the road.
Spread eagle on the
I'm
hood.
I'm not speaking from personal experience, but I'm just saying.
I was going to ask, but
Commissioner Grill.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. On the reclaimed water breaks, I had a discussion with a neighbor and somebody from, we had road work. We seem to be having particular problems. I actually thought we had some seismic activity. I was wondering, did we have some seismic activity? To have these many breaks over the last few weeks, something's up. And city manager, I think it's something we need to talk with Public Works and the county. My understanding, and as I started thinking back, some months ago, we had a problem with pressure. And what turns out is that the valves and the pumping in our Public Works yard, the county, first off, they weren't working, so many of us didn't have pressure to water the lawn. Why didn't we have pressure? Problem with these pumps and valves, the county changed it. My understanding is Tierra Verde was not getting pressure, so that the county turned up the pressure in the lines so that it would reach Tierra Verde, because it comes across the bridge, comes through our plant, and then all the way out to Tierra Verde, has put undue pressure on our lines, which is why we continue to get the number of breaks that we're getting. And we need to look at that, because something is up to have these many breaks. And I've had discussions, and I sent an email earlier. We've got county repairing multiple times in the same location, only to have it break 2 or 3 weeks again later. And then we get Roland, because we put the process in place where we have multiple breaks. Roland will do the curb-to-curb repair. So A, we've got the inconvenience, of course. B, are we paying the county for these multiple repairs that they come out and do? And I can personalize it, because I have one in front of my house and one a couple hundred feet up, up the street on our yard. On our street. And the short answer is we call them in, county comes out, turns off the reclaimed water, so now I get an earful because we don't have reclaimed water for 4 days. Thank goodness it's cooling off, but when it was really hot, hey, all my expensive landscaping is dying. And it then manifests itself in the quality of our roads, and then I go back to the amount of money we're spending, because we had Mike up here once, and we just did a back of the envelope discussion on how many laterals do we have, how much does it cost to fix each lateral, and Mike said it's $3,000 to $5,000 per, including the repair as well as the paving. Multiply that out by the number of laterals. So we were up, to redo every lateral in the city was 18 million. You could cut it to 15 million, and then someone said, still okay, 10 or 8. It's still money we wouldn't spend. So we're spending money. We're trying to get our roads working. It's just a cycle that doesn't seem to get us to any end game ahead of the curve. So long explanation to say, I think we really need to sit down with the county and look at the model to say, what are we really doing, and the amount of money and effort we're spending. Because as Mike said, he lost 4 hours of his day. Things will always break. I mean, that's just a mechanical thing. The fact of life with something mechanical. But to have 14 breaks in a day on the reclaim side, to take 4 hours out of multiple people's day when everybody's pedal to the metal, we got to look at the model, I would think. So, and We've got them all across District 2, and I'm sure it's the same across the city. So at least I know we didn't have an earthquake, but I think it may be due to the pressure, because why are we getting so many breaks? Just remind everybody, tomorrow's Election Day. We don't have anything locally, but those who may be watching, or from other municipalities or out-of-state residents who are watching, a happy Election Day, and make sure you get out and exercise your right to vote. And Saturday is, reminder, is Veterans Day, so don't forget to go out and thank and honor our veterans. So that's what I have, and thank you very much.
Commissioner Grouse?
Just a couple of quick comments. I know the city manager mentioned getting close to hiring an HR manager and also a communications manager. Maybe that would be a job. City clerk could be, those two could coordinate on the ADA, bringing things up to speed and getting things. I mean, it seems like that would be, get the word out to the residents. I think that would be a big deal, and also figure out what we need to do through HR. And then just a quick comment to Commissioner Morone, the other issue that you're having down there on Vina Del Mar. We had that same issue in District 1 up here 2 years ago. No reason whatsoever, middle of the afternoon, the power would go out. Duke Energy did take some steps to do some undergrounding in District 1, and that was on their dime, I believe. I think that that was something that they were doing to harden the system. But I think that there's other things they can do also, other than the undergrounding, just to harden that, because I know it's terribly frustrating, and you're just sitting there, and I work from home, to sit there and all of a sudden the power just goes out for no reason whatsoever on a beautiful sunny afternoon. You're like, what's going on here? So there are things that they can do, though, other than the undergrounding to help that. It's helped tremendously in District 1. That's all I have.
All right, just want to give a quick update from Kelly Levy, the Pinellas County Director of Public Works, about the emergency dunes and beach renourishment. So St. Pete Beach is mostly done. Pastor Grill should be done by next week. There will be additional materials placed at the pedestrian crossings within the dunes. So they're expected to have almost all that done. The concrete work should be done already. Upland Beach should be virtually done at this point. And they are still working with the Army Corps of Engineers to come to a resolution. She didn't really indicate how, if there was any progress on that or how hopeful she was, but, and I'll read this just so that it's verbatim. We're going to implement an expedited design. However, we do require federal and state permits, which can be a lengthy process. So they are moving forward with the plan to go on it on their own if they have to, if the Army Corps of Engineers does not come along. But as she said, that is an unknown and they cannot control it. So it sounds like, Upland Beach is pretty much done or should be done by the end of this week, and then Pastor Grill should be done at the very latest by next week. But that's not beach renourishment, this is just the emergency shore stabilization project. So. All right, thank you all for coming today. Have a good evening. We are adjourned.